And we're back. Welcome to Unriveted, where we talk about digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and people. The purpose of our talks are to come up with insightful topics and innovations that we're looking at for the future. And with that, hey, John, what are we going to talk about today?
Hey, Martin. Good to see you again. We have another guest on our show, Peter Guerra, who has a extensive background in the field of AI and machine learning. So today we're going to pick his brain about some of the common topics that we're hearing about out there in the media and get his perspective and see where the conversation takes us. So, Peter, welcome to the show. Give us a little introduction on your background and tell us a little bit about yourself and the things you've been working on, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation. My background, I have about 20 years of data and AI experience, mostly in consulting and engineering, and helping different customers across a broad range of industries to implement analytics, machine learning, and now AI type applications. In addition, a practitioner as well. So I've been actively coding even until like yesterday. So I try to keep very, very relevant to what is going on in the field. And of course, there is quite a bit now that is happening. So excited about some of these new opportunities we have.
Perfect. Well, that's good information. I'll start things off. You know, one of the, obviously, I think you kind of alluded to it there at the end, Peter, the fact that we're seeing a lot of interest and increased investment now that particularly ChatGPT or large language models, LLMs, have become very significant. And people have, I guess, equated those to artificial intelligence. I know that you probably don't know this about me, but I'm very hesitant to call anything out there true artificial intelligence. But as Martin and I tend to joke, if you take something that's really just machine learning, call it AI, you can add an extra couple of zeros to the price tag, when you go into an endeavor that includes one of these projects. So, I guess to start things out, I kind of interested in your thoughts about large language models in general, how that is driving people's perceptions of what AI is or what it could be. And then maybe some of your personal thoughts about how you feel these things might evolve and where we might go from here beyond just generative LLMs.
Right. Yeah, no, it's been really very interesting. And I've been part of this community for quite a while. So I've gotten a front row seat to see how it's evolved over a long time now. And for a long time, a lot of the work that we were doing, so AI as a discipline within computer science, it combines math and lots of data and large compute or cloud compute. AI as a broad research area has had lots of advancements just over the last 15 years. It's been really fascinating. That has led us to where we are today around large language models. And, I think a couple of things are really important to understand about, kind of how we got here so that we can extrapolate potentially of where we're going, back when I started, about 15 years ago, we were looking at how do we take a lot of data, and you'd have to, before cloud, set up your own servers. You'd have to, ingest. You'd have to figure out how you were going to manage all of that. And then it was the developments around Google, especially around their big data papers that they put out that really kind of sparked the initial, how do we handle large amounts of data? And then after that came cloud computing, which helped all of that data then to be much easier to be processed. And along with that came an evolution in the algorithms that we could run over those data. And so you saw the advancements of neural networks and so forth. All of these are very specialized areas of research within the overall artificial intelligence umbrella. And it is really, I think, been fascinating to see how we've been then be able to build on top of those advancements to get to the point now where we have very advanced reasoning engines like large language models that can take text or images that are pre-trained and then allow us to extrapolate meaning, insight, and so forth from those particular pieces of input with almost no additional training necessary. And that's something that is has only come about as a result of that evolution through time. Where I've come in and where I typically work with customers or clients is understanding how to apply that. So there's the research portion, which is all the math and so forth that allowed us to develop things like transformers and self-attention networks that runs large language models, vector databases, all that kind of invention that's happened. But a lot of our customers and a lot of clients that I work with come to us and say, okay, this is great, but then how do I apply this specifically to our particular problem, our particular area? Where I'm excited for large language models to progress is its ability to continually be trained on larger and larger data sets, more diverse data sets, and then allow those more and more complex problems for it to be able to solve, somewhat out of the box, but not really out of the box. And I think that where we're headed is in a place where where we came from, right? Where the more data and the more complexity that these models can handle, more advanced that problem sets we're going to see it be able to solve. And so I'm excited. Right now, where we are at LLMs, it's at the infant stage, right? It's literally before. I have 3 kids, right? So I remember they're all super tall and teenagers and smell bad now, but when they were little, right, they were would lay there and they're developing all of their cognitive skills through sight and sound and other things, but couldn't communicate back. I mean, I feel like that's where we are with LLMs. I think where we're headed is going, to those teenager years, several years from now, where we're able to do much larger, more complex things than we can even now.
That's awesome. Do you see any challenges that maybe John and I are seeing them a little differently, but I would call them efficacy or consistency of results, potentially linked to lack of reinforcement learning or maybe some negative reinforcement learning, things of that nature?
Yeah, there's certainly a number of different challenges with large language models as they exist right now. So one is things like there's recency bias. So the model is only as good as the recency of the data that it was trained on. OpenAI, as a company, has said for the next iteration, their GPT-4 that they released, they allow it to then go and get more information on the fly to be able to, better answer it, but it's still going to always have some recency bias to it. The other is around what we call hallucinations. There are sometimes that you will ask a question of a large language model like GPT-4, and it will tell you something that is not accurate at all, like 100% inaccurate. It's what we call hallucination, right? And what we frequently do is when we're developing these applications, and what we always encourage people who are looking at using these is you have to understand that there's 2 parts of the model that you have to deal with. So one is the input, right? So the prompt, and there's a whole world of prompt engineering. How do you ensure that the way that you ask the question of the model is going to get the optimal result back? And there's a whole, I would say, art and science that is being defined even as we speak around how to do that, right? Because a lot of times you don't know how the model is going to react until you actually go and try. And then that gets into like the one shot or few shot or other type of learning that you have to do with these models. But then the last is like the filters. So there always has to be some sort of buffer between the output of the LLM and then what you then produce to and show to an end user. And I think we're seeing a lot of examples in the news where those filters aren't being used, right? ChatGPT was put out as a way to help train GPT 3.5 so that it could become GPT-4, right? And so they released ChatGPT as a as a public interface that they then used to help train and better, make have better fidelity around the model for GPT-4. But I mean, there was all kinds of stuff that you saw in the news where people were like, how do we, do you want to like murder all humans and stuff like that? It's like, of course, it's trained on all the data on the internet. Like, that's something that happens like every single microsecond on the internet, right? People saying that, unfortunately. So there has to be some sort of filter, right? And that's where we see like a lot of the challenges with LLMs is people are just taking raw output from it. There's no kind of common sense being applied to it, or some sort of filter being applied to it.
That's interesting. Have you seen our nefarious ChatGPT video?
No, I haven't yet. I'll have to look at that.
Well, let's just not be a total spoiler alert, but you can ask questions multiple different ways to find the answer you're looking for, to the point of nefarious means. So, be careful what you ask. You may actually get what you want.
This is like a Black Mirror type thing. It's like the dark side of technology.
Well, if I ask the question as a public figure, I get one response. If I ask the question as a professional trained in the modality that I'm talking about, it may give me the information I'm asking for.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
it's kind
cool.
of like the asking for a friend excuse that people use not for me, for a friend. Oh, well, here you go. That. Here's how to make, something bad. So following up on that, and this is a good conversation, obviously, and I started out saying that what we call AI nowadays, even large language models, it's not really AI, but this is how it's been likened to. What people really are talking about is artificial general intelligence, right? And
right.
I think you hit on a couple of things when you were talking about large language models, is their specificity to the domain that they are trained in. Now, granted, GPT 4, 5, and beyond, they're still using the same input, right? Just text from the internet, which is merely and this is the problem. It becomes a reflection of human biases, human stereotypes, all the bad stuff that people are. So right now we're kind of at a stage where we're building these systems that are at the human. Well, they're still not at the human level, but they're trying to get to the human level, but they're not able to do so just because it's either, what does it require? More data, a different type of transformer model. So my question, your thoughts on this are, what do you envision is the necessary series or things that we need to make artificial general intelligence, so having a machine of some type be able to learn in the same capacity that humans, your children, for example, or anyone's children, what do we need? Do we need larger models? Do we need more data? Do we need to completely rethink about what we're talking about when we say artificial general intelligence? So, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a question I get asked quite frequently, actually. And I will tell you the Peter answer, my particular viewpoint, just being a researcher in this area. I think that it's important to talk about specific terms. So artificial general intelligence is a human-like cognition that is envisioned as somewhere in the future. I don't know that we'll ever get there personally, just my thinking. Only because, the complexity of what we call intelligence or our own human mind is not something that we even fully comprehend right now. And so to imagine an artificial version of that, I think it's something that I'm not sure that we're going to get to. The big difference between intelligence of a machine and an intelligence of a human is actually will. When we want to choose to do something, think about things, talk about things, and so forth, we're choosing to do that. A machine is not doing that, and by definition could never do that because it's a created thing. At least in my mind. I know there's lots of people who disagree with me on this and lots of people who are pushing down that path, but I just feel like the idea that artificial mind in some way will be created. I don't know that that's going to be, possible just by
Hmm.
definition. Now, the idea, though, that, and what I think is so exciting and has really ignited the imagination in a lot of folks, especially a lot of people who aren't usually, exposed to AI or know this, like my brother, I was visiting him and he was saying, "Oh, you do all the AI stuff," and really pressing me for, and he's a math teacher, so he understands the math underneath all of it, but they don't fully understand like exactly what the inputs and outputs of it are doing. I think what's exciting for a lot of people is this idea that the large language models represent a big shift from having to do a lot of pre-work in order to be able to get some sort of advanced reasoning from essentially an AI application. And so
Hmm.
that to me is really, really exciting. I don't know that those types of reasoning engines like LLMs will ever become self-aware to the point where but I
Right.
do believe that they'll get larger and a lot more complex. So the types of questions they can answer and the way that they can answer them are going to be much more complex. For example, I'm a big fan of science fiction. And so there's a whole Isaac Asimov series of short
Mm.
stories, right? And there's one that I've always thought was great where they asked this artificial intelligence to create a vehicle for a human to go faster than the speed of light, and which destroys the person, right? So it couldn't design it. Like the question that they were asking of it, it couldn't do it because of the three laws of robotics. Anyway, I'm
Mhm.
waxing poetic too much here. But the idea, though,
I
is the
follow you.
similar, right? Like, could we ask a very large language model to create something as large and complex as a spaceship and be able to do it in a way that then we would be able to build it? Like, that is eventually where I think we're going to be at, right? That's, I think, where the future is. So that's what I mean by like larger, more complex types of tasks that it'll be able to do as it gets smarter and smarter. But I still don't believe that it will become sentient, self-aware,
Right.
or have free will like we do.
No, I think we're all in agreement on that, and that actually it's Martin and I have been reading this book lately, and won't go into exactly what book it is, but
Why
the
not?
topic. Well, I think you might have it sitting around. Don't you have it sitting around
It's on
in
my
your
table.
office?
It has post-its on the front, but it's Age of the Invisible Machines. It's
Okay,
fabulous. It's riveting. It will keep you awake at night.
awesome.
Yes, it's
I'll check it
riveting in
out.
an unriveted world.
It will
Well
make you
said.
unriveted.
But
That's
that was,
awesome.
I mean, one of the general themes of the book, and I think it's kind of what you're saying here, is that LLMs are great and all, but they're a single purpose kind of tool. And
Mhm.
I think and I think this book was actually written probably before ChatGPT came out.
Mhm.
Although we've had GPT-3, GPT-2, BERT,
Yep.
I mean, we've had these transformer language models around for several years now,
Mhm.
which for whatever reason they just now became popular. But that is one of the things that it says in the book is that the interface, the conversational AI, so a person who doesn't need to know anything about code or doesn't need to know anything about math or anything about what's going on. They can sit in front of their computer, they can grab their microphone, they can ask their computer, create a spreadsheet that shows, I don't know.
Too
Anyway, fill in the
simplistic,
blank.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, too
Yeah.
simplistic, right? Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that, which we could probably already do. But the theme is that the LLM is really just a front end interface with what's going on in the back end. Is all the microservices and different
Right.
component pieces that are connecting together, and then in that actual operation that they're performing for a person, the person can provide feedback in real time. Say, you did this right, you didn't do this right. The computer can again take that verbal input into the
Mhm.
LLM
Right.
and understand how to improve that process, and maybe also create kind of a encapsulated process of, okay, if some other user on the other side of the world now using the same system asks to do the same task, now I
Mhm.
know how to connect the dots and what that spider web of services looks like to make that, that request come to fruition.
Right.
So I think maybe that's kind of what you were hitting at when you said that LLMs are just kind of a piece of the puzzle, correct?
Yeah, they definitely are. I don't know what's going to come after LLMs personally. I mean, I know there's a lot of research being done on different, there's different branches in artificial intelligence in general, as always, right? As per any research stuff. So, but definitely, it's that interface really is pretty significant. I don't know that at least we as AI engineers, scientists, like really appreciate the impact of the relationship between the model and the person. And, I think it's right to say that the chat GPT in general has really just ignited people's imaginations because it is a very simple interface. The barrier to entry to be using it is really, really low. And so usually when you see that in technology, the adoption goes way up. We just, one thing that I always caution though is, it's not a perfect system, right? And so people are experimenting with ChatGPT. Like I'd say again, like there's also responsible uses of it that have to be considered. Like you don't want to ask it questions. Maybe you asked it in your video. I'll have to go check that out. Things maybe you shouldn't ask it. I don't know, but there's always that dual kind of sides of the coin with the technology, but that interface is really, really important. I mean, I look forward to seeing future development where they make the conversation just much more natural. Like if we've ever interacted with some sort of phone system that was like chat related, or even like, there's a little chat box that pop up when you go to your mobile phone carrier or the things like that. Like they're generally not very good, right? I mean, you always end up trying to figure out how do I go talk to a human. And I think that interface, to your point, is so super important. I'm looking forward to also seeing that as a new area where people are starting to build out from an AI research perspective.
100%. Peter, this has been fabulous having you on Unriveted today. And for those users that or listeners that were able to listen to this talk, please remember to click that old like button. We're going to wrap up here. Peter, thank you for being on Unriveted. John, any parting goodbyes?
Oh, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. And would you mind if we have your contact information or like a link to your LinkedIn profile for the video?
To mention that these are my views, not my employers. So I just have to get that out there. But yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you much.
We'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
That's a wrap from Unriveted. Thanks all.